Hey guys, Tim here, Big Dog Forge. Welcome back to the shop. It's good to see you again. So we're going to continue on with the Rusty Damascus series. We're at the end of the document that we've been going off of that was sent to us by Steve at Green Beetle. It's a document that was written in 1824 if you haven't been keeping up with the series, and it describes how they were making imitation Damascus back in 1824 in India. And what we're going to do is try to recreate some of that. The unique thing is they use rusty steel to do it with. And so we're going to follow that along and see if we can do 3,000 layers out of a pile of rusty steel. Yeah. Anyway, stick with us. Should be fun. We'll see you at the other end. Okay guys, so this is going to look very similar to the last couple of videos doing this Rusty Damascus. The difference here is you're going to notice that I'm annealing some files. This is carbon steel, and in this particular part of this document it's about making blades, and in the previous videos it was all about making Damascus for shotgun barrels. So we experimented with that, and now we've moved on to some material that was actually designed to make blades from. So I'm prepping these files, cutting them off at about 6.5 inches long. I took the teeth off the edges and the faces, and we're putting them in this little holder to prep them for a little bit later on. These are our barrel bands. And the key to all of this, according to this document, is everything has to be very rusty to work with. Alright, and these guys have been sitting out in the rain for about the last 6.5 months. This is when all this started, and I decided to start rusting steel for this project. We're going to even up the sides of the barrel bands to match the files, and we're drilling out some cast iron here, and we're going to powder it because it describes mixing cast iron powder and borax and sprinkling it between the layers. Now we're going to start with 17 layers here. We're using a file which is a higher carbon, and then we're putting 3 layers of the barrel bands between, and we're putting cast iron between each layer. So this will be our billet construction to start with at 17 layers with cast iron and borax between each. And what I did is, from previous experiences, I cut down the borax content. The last time it was up around 20%, and this time I've got it down to about 5% borax. That's by volume, not by weight. That cast iron is pretty heavy. Alright. So we're going to get a handle welded on this thing, and this is going to be our 17 layer billet that we're going to start with, and it's about as rusty as I can get it. This is one of the things they talked about, is the workmen rusting the barrel bands more if they weren't rusty enough. Okay, my favorite part. The initial weld here went really well. Everything seems real solid. Very nice. So I couldn't even begin to tell you the chemistry behind this, but it seems to be working in a way that the borax is protecting the carbon that's in the cast iron, and the cast iron's lower melting point is becoming sort of part of the flux to get the layers to weld together, and it's mixing with the iron oxide. Now, doing previous experiments with this, those veins that it's creating through the steel, when you bend it and break it, looks very much like wrought iron. It's really interesting, and one of you really smart guys out there can probably tell me more about the chemistry. So it just seems to work, and I find it amazing that someone in history was able to put all this together and figure it out. Humans are some of the smartest people I've ever met. Okay, we're going to fold this thing over. You saw on the power hammer, we used our little makeshift tool, and we cut it twice. This is going to allow us to triple our layer count each time we do, and it will save on time in the forge, and it'll save us from losing so much to fire scale. So 17 layers times 3 is going to give us 51 layers at this point. Okay, so a little bit more about this document we're working off. Some of the terms are dated a little bit. It took a little research to figure out what they were talking about, but it's pretty straightforward. And in it they tell you that you make your blade steel pretty much the same way you make your steel for shotgun barrels. The difference is that you do put the higher carbon steel between mild steel layers, and they say that it's you bring out the vein the same way. So that's an interesting way to put it, but they're talking about the lines in the Damascus itself. So they talk about how to bring these veins out, and really what they're referring to is their pattern development and how they do that. And they talk about drawing the material out to 1/3 longer than the blade that you're going to create, and then twist it, fold it back on itself, draw it out again, twist it, fold it back, and you do this several times. So what I've decided that I'm going to do here is just continue to fold, get closer to my layer count that I want, and then I will give it a good tight twist and continue on from there, and we'll see how that goes. Alright, we'll cut this guy again. Had a little trouble with the tool and the power hammer. It was getting a little tired here, but with a little perseverance we got her done here. I think after we make this cut, we'll set this aside for a minute, have ourselves some lunch. Sounds pretty good. Well, it looks like I'll be sharing lunch. Alrighty then. That was good. And we're back at it. We're going to go ahead and get this thing folded over, and we'll get him back underneath the power hammer and get this weld set. Okay, so this gives us 459 layers after this tri-fold. Alright, we're going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to read you part of this document. The bar is then to be heated about 1/3 of its length at a time, and being struck on the edge, it is flattened out the contrary way to that of the stratification. This part of the operation brings the wire or vein outward upon the strap. So basically what we're doing here is we've rotated the bar 90 degrees to flatten it so that the edge pattern is now on the face on both sides. Okay, we're going to clean this guy up, and we're going to get him onto the surface grinder so we can polish him up a little bit and get him into some vinegar so we can check this pattern. And I'm not expecting much here. I expect it's just going to be a bunch of straight lines. We've been doing nothing but just folding and stacking and re-welding, and it's pretty much what we got. It's a pretty fine grain, and it's kind of boring. So we're going to weld a handle on this guy. There we go. And back under the press. And we started out with a 1-inch thick bar here, and we're going to have to go a little thinner than this. And kind of not doing very well there. Alright, let's grab something a little thinner. Let's get this 3/4 inch square bar. There we go. And we're going to forge this down into 3/4 of an inch square. And it ended up being just about as long as the forge is by the time we get done with this. And we're going to get it under the power hammer and knock the corners down. We're going to round it off a little bit. And I was squaring something off and twisting it in a previous video, and a subscriber was like, hey, why don't you round it off? You don't have to deal with the raised corners, because I was complaining about losing material. And I'm like, okay, so I'll do that. And I had done that before when I did the dirty Damascus video that sort of started this whole fiasco. And I'll leave a card up in the corner or something to that video. You can check it out. But yeah, it does help to round these guys off before. Alright, so I'm sticking each end in the forge because it is a little bit longer. So we're going to cut that handle off. we got it back into the forge so we can get ourselves a fairly even twist all the way up. Alright, we're going back to the press, and we're making this thing flat again. We're going 1 inch wide and 3/8 of an inch thick. And I started flattening it here before I turned the camera on, but you get the idea. And we'll square this off as best we can, corners and face and all that good stuff. And rounding that off really did save a lot of material. And then what we'll do is get this thing under the power hammer. I did not show you that, but I nicked it with our cutoff tool in 3 places so that we could fold it over 4 times. And I'm using our borax and cast iron mix to flux this, and I've done that every time that I've folded this, so we've been adding cast iron right along. So we got it back over to the forge. We're losing a little bit of heat there to get this last fold in. Okay, we've got 459 times 4 layers, gives us 1836 layers. And what we'll do here is we'll get this guy back under the press, rotate him 90 degrees again, and bring that pattern out that would normally be on the edge to the face, so that we can get as much pattern out of this as possible. They describe twisting these multiple times. We've only twisted once, but that's good enough for this go around. What we're really looking for is that high layer count and a little bit of pattern. I think we should achieve that here. Alrighty, we're going to clean this guy up, and we've got one more thing to do to him. And I've been debating this through this whole process. They describe in the back of this document, or towards the end, about laminating different steels and irons together to make sort of San-mai construction of this. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take a piece of 1084 after I get this cleaned up, and we're going to cut this in half and sandwich it on the outside of a piece of 1084. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons that I'm doing this. A 1084 core in this is going to give whoever makes a knife out of this the ability to heat treat this and know what that edge is going to be and how it's going to act in a heat treat. There won't be a lot of guess, and we'll still get the aesthetic of the Damascus that's been put on the outside. So there we go. There's 1836 plus 1 in the middle plus 1836 equals 3,673 layers. That's not counting all the layers of cast iron in there. So, alright guys. Anyway, with that particular piece in the middle, it should stabilize this so a decent knife can be made out of it. Because honestly, I wouldn't even know how to begin how to heat treat this thing. It would take some experimentation. They do describe tempering and heat treating in the document, and that's something I'm going to leave up to the knife maker. At least they know what the edge of the blade is going to be, and that may help them out a little bit. So there you go. I clean this guy up as best I can. I notched the end of my little kiss block there so I could get this thing to about 1 5/8 wide, and by the time we clean it up it'll be about 1.5 inches wide. We are going to end up at about 3/8 of an inch thick, and this thing is about 8-9 inches long, and one end of it had the handle welded to it. I am not going to remove that. That would be perfect hidden tang material. So alright, we'll get this thing into the vinegar and we'll leave it there about 12 hours. And we'll pull it out and see what this thing looks like. The contrast is beautiful. I love the pattern. The funny thing about this is I would have never thought that vinegar would give such a contrast in something like this, but it apparently does. It works really well. I'm very impressed with it, and it takes a lot longer. You have to let it sit for a day or two or even longer to get it to do this, but it works really well. And I'm thinking maybe To get the contrast to pop even a little more, I might try some instant coffee, but we'll see. Alright folks, there you go. So it came out really well, very happy with it. Wanted to give a big shout out to Green Beetle, Steve over there. Thank you for sending me that document. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for stopping by Big Dog Forge. Thanks for hanging out during the video. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you enjoyed it. And that's about it. So if you think about it, like, share, and subscribe if you haven't. And take care. Be safe. We'll see you next time right here at Big Dog Forge. Bye-bye now.